In this week's Parsha, Parshas Eikev, we have a very important section called Parshas Hayira, the Parsha that speaks about fear of God. It starts with the pasuk, Ve'ata Yisrael, Ma Hashem Elokecha shoyel me'imach, ki im liyiras Hashem Elokecha. What does Hashem ask of you except to fear God himself? And it goes on and speaks about loving God and cleaving to him and serving him and many other important concepts in Judaism. It is customary in some communities to actually recite this portion every day. Apparently that is a tradition that is traced back to Rabbeinu Yonah. And some say to specifically recite it on the Tuesday of this week, Parshas Eikev, as a segula for Yiras Shamayim. So, as I mentioned, that section starts off with the words, Ma Hashem Elokecha shoyel me'imach. What does Hashem ask of you? And the Gemara says that this is referring to 100 blessings a day. Al tikri ma elameya. You need to say 100 blessings a day in order to achieve fear of heaven. In fact, according to the Medrash, this was established by King David himself. And it was only later formalized by the men of the Great Assembly when they actually made the text of the blessings as we know them. One of the blessings that we say is Shehechiyanu v'kiyimanu v'yigiyanu lezman hazeh. Thanking God for giving us life and existence and bringing us to this day. And you say that blessing among other times when you hear good news. In addition, we also say the blessing of Tov v'hametiv when you hear news that is good for both yourself and for others. Based on this, the Gemara says that if a person heard that his wife had a baby boy, he should say the blessing v'hametiv. It is good for him and for others. It's good for him, he's happy about it. And it's good for others, his wife is also happy about it. Although the Gemara doesn't say it specifically, but it's understood that the new mother also says this bracha. It's possible for the father to say it and the mother to listen and fulfill her obligation with that blessing and answer amen, or she can say it herself. In any case, she should be properly covered and be in the right frame of mind and wash her hands and so on before she says the blessing or listens to it. If she is not able to do that right away, the father can say the bracha first, and she can say it again later. According to Magen Avraham, a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, it's proper for the father, that is, to stand and bow to the east towards Jerusalem before saying this blessing. It's recommended that while bowing, he says, Hoidu laHashem ki toiv ki la'olam chasdai, giving thanks to Hashem for his kindness, and then saying the blessing. Now, the commentaries quote why this blessing is not recited on the birth of a baby girl. Now, there is another blessing that is recited. We're going to get to it in a minute. But why does the Talmud only speak about a baby boy? And the Rashba says that this blessing is not made about good news that brings a person emotional or spiritual pleasure, but specifically physical pleasure and benefits. So the birth of a boy in ancient times, in particular, was a actual physical benefit in terms of the fact that the boys were expected to care for their elderly parents. The women would be incorporated into the families that they married into, and it was not considered their responsibility to care for their elderly parents as they had become part of their new family, so to speak. In addition, in terms of the family wealth, it was the standard that the boys would inherit and the girls would not, although they received a dowry from their parents, but they would not actually inherit. So the sons were the ones who carried on the family's traditions in terms of the properties. And for these two reasons, the sons are the ones who have that physical benefit more so than the daughters. Now, although nowadays many women take care of their elderly parents, perhaps even more so than the men, and many women do inherit in the society that we live in today. Nevertheless, these blessings were established in the time of the Talmud, and we do not change them. Another explanation from Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Berlin is that a daughter, although it's a big joy, it's also tempered by worry. As the Gemara says, that a father loses sleep over his daughter, worrying when she's young if people will take advantage of her, when she's older if she will find the right spouse, when she gets married if she'll have children, and so on. And therefore, because of these worries, a blessing is not appropriate. At the same time, there are commentaries who question his explanation, since there are plenty of worries with boys as well, and one never knows how their children will end up. The Eshel Avram, a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, says that because men and women, husbands and wives, are considered to be two halves of one soul, so when the girl's future husband is born, presumably before her, but sometimes after her, the blessing that that boy's parents will make actually includes the blessing for his future spouse, the daughter of the other family. Now, the Alter Rebbe writes in his Seder Birchas Hanenin that even though the blessing of Hatov v'Hametiv is not recited on the birth of a girl, but the blessing of Shehecheyanu is recited. Just like when one sees a friend that one has not seen for 30 days, in the same way one says this blessing for a daughter. Of course, it's not the same as a friend because you've never seen the daughter before, but the point is that it's at least a greater joy, if not more, certainly, to see one's new daughter than to see a friend that one has not seen in 30 days. The Mishnah Berurah says the same thing. Interestingly, he says, "V'nira li," it appears to me as if it's his novel teaching, when in fact the Alter Rebbe preceded him with this ruling. It has been suggested in other contexts that the Mishnah Berurah actually did not have the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe. Although he quotes the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch many times, he does not appear to quote the Siddur, and therefore he may not have seen this ruling of the Alter Rebbe, and therefore came to that conclusion on his own. Rav Moshe Feinstein explains that the only reason the earlier poskim, the earlier halachic commentaries did not mention the blessing of Shehecheyanu for the birth of a girl is because they considered it obvious. Now, no matter how many children a person has had, every child is special and brings a special joy with them, and these blessings are therefore recited. Now, in general, one should say the blessing as soon as they hear the good news. In terms of a girl, actually, one should see the baby before saying the blessing. But the Kaf HaChaim says that one should actually thank Hashem before they thank the messenger. Somebody tells them the good news, even before saying thank you, they should first thank Hashem. Now, as far as the limit until what point one may recite this blessing, some say that it must be recited immediately and cannot be delayed at all. Others, the Pri Megadim says that it does not have to be recited immediately, and the Mishnah Berurah quotes that opinion, but it's not clear exactly till what point one has. Some say one can only say it until the end of that conversation while they're still talking about the baby or seeing the baby and so on. Others say it can be recited as long as one feels the joy in one's heart. And finally, some say that it can be recited within the first 3 days of the birth, as long as one still feels the joy. Now, whenever one is not sure if it's too late or not to say this blessing, based on the opinions we said above, one can always say the blessing without Hashem's name. Baruch Hatov v'Hametiv, or Baruch Shehecheyanu v'Kiyemanu v'Higiyanu lezman hazeh, etc. Now, another option that is mentioned is that when one says the grace after meals, Birkat HaMazon, at some point after having the baby, if one is not sure about saying the blessing, they can have the baby in mind when they say the fourth blessing of the Birkat HaMazon, which includes the words Hatov v'Hametiv. Now, the Rashba says that he has not seen that people are particular to make these blessings, and he suggests that they perhaps are only optional and are not mandatory. Based on this, the Sephardic custom is to actually not make these blessings. Rather, the father makes the blessing of Shehecheyanu only on the birth of a boy at the baby's Brit Milah. A Sephardic Jew who does not know exactly the custom of their community, whether to say it or not, it is recommended by the Ben Ish Chai that he says the blessing of Shehecheyanu on a new fruit or new garment. However, the Mishnah Berurah rules that Ashkenazim should say this blessing. Well, he rules that one should say the blessing, but Ashkenazim follow his opinion. And the Rav Moshe Feinstein adds that especially in this generation, when we are impoverished in mitzvot, we should certainly not miss an opportunity to bless God and thank Him for His kindness. If one has twin babies, whether boys or girls, and they know they're having those two babies, they should wait until the second baby is born and say the one blessing on both. If they did say the blessing in between, they should say another blessing after the second one. If it's one boy and one girl, there are two opinions. Some say one should say one blessing, Hatov v'Hametiv, and have both in mind after they're both born. Others say that one should say separate blessings on each one, Hatov v'Hametiv for the boy and Shehecheyanu for the girl. If a baby is born premature, if, God forbid, the baby's life is in danger, one should not say the blessing at that point because it is not yet good news. It is still questionable news. If the baby is going to make it, according to the doctor's estimation, one can say the blessing, although there may be other health concerns that one is worried about. As far as a grandchild, so the Sefer Hasidim writes that there was an old man who said a blessing upon the birth of his grandchild. When people questioned that, he said, I wouldn't just say it for a grandchild. I would even say it if a tzaddik, if a righteous man that I knew had a baby and I was happy for him, I would say that blessing. Now, the Mishnah Berurah questions this ruling because we mentioned before the Rashba says there has to be a physical benefit from this. And here, there's no physical benefit from the grandchild or the child of a tzaddik and so on. However, the Ketzos HaShulchan says that since there is a physical benefit to the parents and the grandparents and so on feel the joy of that benefit, they can join in and say the blessing as well. And he quotes the Alter Rebbe's ruling in the Seder Birchas Hanenin that whenever one feels joy in his heart for someone's good news, for example, one's father, teacher, or friend that he loves like himself, one may recite the blessing of Hatov v'Hametiv. That is the ruling of the Ketzos HaShulchan, Rabbi Avraham Chaim Noah. I wish you all a good Shabbos. May we soon merit to say the blessing of Hatov v'Hametiv with the coming of Mashiach speedily in our days.